Sharks, what's up? So, I'm out of town. I don't really have the equipment to do any of my normal segments, ideas, frames, anything like that. Not the usual filming location, not the usual attire. I'm not a Jets fan, by the way. Just have the shirt for the moment. Um, Wanted to talk about this just because I feel like it, just because it's late, and I wanted to sort of get myself still in the swing of putting out videos and things like that and keeping my mind fresh and staying on top of everything that's going on. I decided to sort of record this segment, which I've been planning on for a while. Did Shark used to work in the league? Yes. Yes, he did. For 2 years, I was the executive assistant to an NBA agent. I was responsible for putting together film, reviewing film, scouting. I was responsible for player development, player logistics, any research stuff on the league that was important to the operation, like where our players were best suited and things like that, and a lot of different things. Now, obviously, I can't really go into specifics because one rule I learned early on, you never know who's listening. And then the second thing being just proprietary information. I don't want to drop any names or give any clues that would be definitive in me dropping any names. Although, it's not to say you couldn't piece together the put the pieces together if you wanted to, but don't. You don't have to. It's not important. Anyway, yeah, I used to work in the league. From the representation side of things, I was conscripted. I guess out of college, I was seen wearing a Pistons Dennis Rodman shirt, and a parent of a friend of mine came up to me and said, "Rodman, really?" This was at the time where Rodman had gone to North Korea, and I said, "Oh yeah," because I'd grown up with Rodman, as a young Bulls fan, and I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I know how different Rodman will seem to so many different people, and I realize how controversial he is and will continue to be." But that's just who he is. I mean, he can, no more change that than a leopard can change its spots. So, Rodman to me is just someone who you either accept it or you don't. There's no real room for modification there or improvement. He's not you don't have to do anything to him. He is what he is, and I love that about him. And whether I agree with everything he does, I don't. But I loved who he was. So I was rocking that. And then a couple of years later, said parent called me and said, "Hey, would you want to get involved with X? Let me talk to you, see what your knowledge of the game is." And I said, and to be honest, at the time, I didn't know a ton. I was still understanding some things about the game, about off-ball movement, about things like that, about, what constitutes real defense. I think I'd been led to believe that blocks are defense when we all know they're not, or some of you know that they're not. But I was willing to figure things out as I went. It wasn't a real area of strength for me where I was like super confident this is going to work out. But I knew on some level that I had to give it a shot. I just had to, And my experiences were crazy. They were crazy. I cold called a lot of teams. See, we didn't have an NBA player, but we did have players who very much were on the cusp of making the G League, that we were trying to trot out to Europe and things like that. Getting to the league is obviously, that's 400, 500 guys. There's another tier, obviously. It's not that the NBA has always had prominent minor leagues that people would go to, like they would go to maybe in baseball or something like that. But suffice it to say, there is a tier of another 1,000, 2,000, maybe 5,000 guys who are right there for a little while in their 20s. The question is, where are they going to land? I've seen, I had to keep up on Turkish Airlines EuroLeague. I had to keep up on, China, CBA. I had to keep up on, I was cold calling Germany. I was waiting until 3 a.m. Eastern so that I could call them during their daily hours. And then I was listening to a German voicemail being like, have I reached the right department? Hi, this is blank with blank, because I'm trying to get a player signed to Germany, a German team, and the money's way better in Europe than it is at the G League. But if you're the G League, you're home. There's a lot of benefits to that, and it's easier for an NBA scout to find you. They've got to fly out if they're going to see anyone of a certain caliber. So I mean, some scouting departments obviously are better than others, and there are some harsh realities in the business. There's some real harsh realities when it comes to getting players signed, which is that if you don't have the pedigree, it is hard. I once had an email with another agent, because that was part of my gig too, was talking to other agencies and working with them to see, if there was any intersectional sort of interest between what they were doing and what I was doing. And he said to me straight up, this guy, and I just had to send a lot of emails to a lot of different teams because the players we had weren't really on a ton of radars at that point. And this agent says, I'm sure he could play, but with his resume, not having gone to a major D1 school, not just a D1 school, a major D1 school, with his resume, it'd be hard for us to, see if there's anything that he could do. And it's like, wow, you're not even going to watch him. You're not even going to watch him play. Like, it didn't matter, and that bugged me righteously, because honestly, the kid he was talking about, I saw him, I took him to G League tryouts in Brooklyn, in, other parts of the country, and it's like, wow. Like, he could play, man. He had a nice dribble. He had a nice form. Like, I knew he could play. He was the best player at some of those tryouts. I was like, yeah, absolutely. I had no real doubts about that. There are guys that absolutely should be in the league, and they don't end up in the league. And if you think about, the environments that some of these young guys come up in, it's like they don't always get the chance. Sometimes life gets in the way, but it doesn't mean that they didn't have offers. It didn't mean they weren't real. It didn't mean they couldn't play, and it's a tough reality, because what happens is, if you are one of the big agents, let's say Bill Duffy, or a couple years ago Leon Rose, or Rob Pelinka when he was an agent, or Bob Myers when he was an agent, or obviously still someone like Rich Paul or someone like that, and you have a whole list of clients. See, what happens with the team is you want to keep your best relationship with the team, and the team wants to keep their best relationship with you. So if the team goes to you and says, hey, we're really thinking about signing X or Y under the table, just between us for now, we're really interested in X or Y. Agent comes back to them and says, okay, well, you know what, in the meantime, I got this kid out of blank, Xavier or San Diego State or something like that, it would be great if you would give him a look. See, they're incentivized to say, okay, yeah, absolutely, because we want the first guy on our list, the first guy on your list. So that means, if it means we have to take 15 or 16 on your list, then we'll do that, because we want to be in your good graces, right? The agents have so much power because they can steer the players, and without those superstar players, a lot of the time it's like, are you really going to get into anything meaningful? Are you really going to get over the hump? It's hard. So those games are everywhere, and that's the reality. If you don't have 15 players, if you have one player or zero, it's like trying to climb a mountain, and it doesn't really matter what your resume is. It doesn't really matter what your skill level is. It doesn't matter what they need, what they don't need. You are, fighting for crumbs, and it's a tragedy. It's a crying shame. I wanted to talk about this a little bit because, this is more in the miscellaneous category, but the guys that we see on Top Shot, they're not necessarily the best players in the league. Like, I was just watching this podcast with T-Mac and Shaq, and T-Mac was like, I know 50 guys on these blocks and on these, in these parks that could bust some of these guys in the league. Absolutely. He was like, I know plenty of guys where it comes to, like, he was talking about having like a one-on-one league. Like, he was saying, T-Mac was saying, like, I know so many guys, at least 50 guys who could bust and some of the guys in the league. And I was like, yeah, no, I don't have any doubt about that. Because you get into a car accident and, you wake up 5 years later and you're healthy again, but you don't have a job playing basketball. Or, something happens with your old lady or whatever, like there's all sorts of things that could go down. Life doesn't go smoothly for everybody, Not everybody gets the runway like LeBron or someone like that, But there's all sorts of talent out there. I saw clips of guys from who I had never ever heard of, Division III guys that I was like, wow. Like the explosiveness, the handle, I was like, wow. And the sad truth is that if we couldn't get them to get a chance, they wouldn't get one. I had guys go out to places with names you probably know, Macedonia, Lithuania, we Mexico. There was a tournament in Mexico at one point, that we were trying to send our guy to, it like all over the place, booking flights, being like, what's the cheapest way we can get this guy on this flight at this time, and then it's like, oh, in the rest of your life, like, where do you need to go? Because that's the other part of the game is what can you do for a player so that they can get this job, because logistically you have to handle that too. If you don't, in another aspect of my life, someone says, if you take care of the music will take care of you. Well, I think that's true in basketball as well. You have to take care of the players. You have to take care of them, maybe more than, a lot of guys get in other fields, because if they're your talent, you got to make sure they stay with you. And as the go-between the agent and the players, my job was not to question anyone or anything. My job was to just say, okay, this is what we're doing. Let's do it. I'm not making decisions. I'm not making calls or anything like that. I'm making telephone calls, but I'm not doing anything to jeopardize the relationship that they have. It's got nothing to do with me. I'm just like the work, I'm doing the work and I enjoy the work, and the perks for me were great, but the reality of it is it's such a fragile situation. One aloof comment can send the whole situation ablaze, and it's like, man, for me, I wanted everything to work, but you can find yourself in some interesting situations when it comes to a relationship that tenuous. Let's just say I found myself in some of those situations, and it was like, wow, without getting into details here, like you can find yourself in some pretty uncomfortable spots, not doing what you signed up to do, far from any employee, far from any HR department. It's like, okay, well, let's just hope we make it out of this in one piece then. It's like, all right, And then there were perks, man. Like, I got to go to Summer League in Vegas. I got flown out, I didn't get introduced to, but I saw Sam Presti, Tom Thibodeau. I saw a lot of Summer League guys before they were really household names, Chris Boucher, Monte Morris, guys like that. I saw Jamal and Jokic kind of just hanging out. No, I think it was just Jamal, actually. Dwayne Casey was coaching one game. I walked by these guys, like I saw Shams. I saw Woj. Woj in the back of the Thomas and Mack Center in Vegas, just sort of talking to two other guys, and I was just trying to what are they saying? Like, I was trying to get some inside info. Sources. What are your sources to tell you, Woj? Because your sources are pretty good, bro. Like, it was fun. It was fun, man. And Tibbs was still with the Wolves back then, but, anyway, like, man, that's cool to have your dreams come true like that, and I have all this stuff, and, I was close enough to the court at one point where they would give you, like, a laminate of the stats after the quarter of the game. That was the year, man, Trey was going to be a rookie. Kevin Knox, man, I know Kevin Knox hasn't gotten a lot of time, but, people were raving about Kevin Knox. Kevin Knox was... People were comparing him to Kevin Durant, man. His handle with his size. I just really feel like Kevin Knox hasn't gotten the opportunity. Maybe he's still raw. I don't know. But, like, there's always been a lot of forwards in New York, right? But, like, Kevin Knox, one of these days when he gets a real chance, I think he's got a chance to do some damage. I still think that. Because you see guys, sometimes they just don't get the playing, the minutes, Like, what are you going to do about that? It's not up to you. There's more guys with more experience on the bench, and if your team's trying to win, they can't necessarily bet on a rookie to take 25 minutes, because what if the balance isn't right? In the starting lineup, and it messes all these other things up, and there's all these agents in your ear saying, well, my guy's got to get 25 minutes. Well, my guy's got to get 15 minutes. My guy's got to lead. Can you move my guy? Like, it's politics, so much politics, but that's life in a lot of ways, That's nothing different. That's nothing new under the sun. In that sense, that's so many jobs in this day and age, This one is just a tad accentuated in terms of just how austere it can be, And so we did our best, We had some players, you'll have heard of later. I got to see um, I got to see clips of Moses Brown before he even had a camp deal. Um, and what my evaluation of him was, oh, I wish I had my laptop. I was going to show you guys the email that I wrote and the date that I wrote it just to prove it to you. My evaluation was, man, 7-footers like this who are mobile like this and have a have a nice touch around the rim. These are rare guys. This guy's going to find a spot. Give you what he ended up giving you, which is 8 and 8 on 60% of the field or something like that. I was like, yeah, he's got to beef up. And somebody was saying to me, are you sure he's not too raw? I'm like, yeah, he is raw, but like he's got the physical tools. I was right. I was right. And that's an amazing thing to look back and be like, oh, Moses, man, when he had that like 20 and 20 game in OKC, I was like, I knew it. I knew it. Size, don't take this the wrong way, but size matters. This way. Size matters, man. You know this. 6'6" is always preferable to 6'3". Guys who are saying they're 6'3" are really 5'11". Guys who are 6'9" are saying they're 6'11". Guys who, in KD's case, he was saying he's 6'9" when he was really taller. He was thinking, oh, I'll be. In those days, it was a small forward, but he didn't want to get typecast as a big guy, so he actually put his number down a couple of inches to make it seem like he was a wing so he could be more skilled, because if he was taller than that, they'd try and make him a power forward like Glenn Davis, and that wasn't going to work for him because he was slender, but now in today's era of basketball, 15 years later, it doesn't matter so much. But yeah, it was a trial. It was wild. It was something special. It was thrilling. I think ultimately I just decided I needed a break. I needed to focus on the main thing in my life, and I needed just sort of the peace and quiet and the ability to dictate how my life goes without being thrust into any emergencies. Like, oh, you got to do this now. You got to book a flight now. Oh, this is the situation with so and so. Oh, well, let me counsel you through this, like personal counseling style. It's like, oh, okay, you're dealing with people. You're not dealing just with numbers on a page. The numbers on the page are the last part. The numbers on the page are what you get if everything else goes right. And the agents are the people responsible for making that happen.